Hello, sinners. How are ya? On today's installment of the Letterboard of Truth, our quote of the day is... Okay, groomer, I feel like we've traveled back to 2016 as of recently. Ukulele covers have made a comeback, Shane Dawson is still trying to make the Mandela effect happen, and James Charles is in the news again. Today, I'll be discussing this outstandingly bad article from Cosmopolitan called James Charles Would Like to Be Uncancelled, Please. And I would like to launch every billionaire into the sun, but we can't all get what we want, can we? In short, Gabrielle Bluestone, the journalist behind this article, made a piss-poor attempt at helping James rehabilitate his public image. Instead, she just reminded all of us that James is still a shameless, thirsty creep who has shown no signs of growth or change. But before we divulge further into the clownery, buffoonery, and fuckery that is James Charles, we have a word from today's sponsor. Hi, sinners. If you Google yourself right now, you might be surprised at how much of your personal information, like your legal name, address, phone number, email, and even your relatives' information, is out there for the world to see. Personally, I don't like that just about anyone can find my information if they look hard enough. If you want to learn how to protect your sensitive data, check out my sponsor, Aura. Data brokers are willing to exploit your personal information because they make a fortune selling it to anyone who wants to learn more about you, such as robocallers, spammers, and telemarketers. But Aura is able to identify data brokers exposing your information, and they'll automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Now that I have Aura, they're currently working on removing my information from 20 data broker websites. Aura also monitors your emails and passwords to see if they were exposed on the dark web. Turns out, my personal email was exposed in several data breaches over the years. Aura goes to great lengths to minimize online threats to you and your loved ones, all at one affordable price. Instead of downloading 50 different softwares, everything you need is on Aura's app. It has parental controls, a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, and malware protection for your registered devices. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial when you go to aura.com/Annamarie. That's aura.com/Annamarie if you'd like to claim your 2-week free trial. You can also click the link at the top of my description or scan this QR code right here. Thank you so much to Aura for supporting my channel yet again and for keeping my sinners and I safe online. Now, with that being said, let's get back to your scheduled programming. I'm going to start by giving the backstory of what led to James's cancellation. However, if you're all caught up and you just want to hear my thoughts on the article, I will break this video into chapters so you can skip around at your convenience. Anyway, why was James Charles canceled in the first place? Now, James is certainly no stranger to controversy. In fact, he's admitted multiple times that being the center of a scandal has helped boost his career. However, in early 2021, James was accused of sending inappropriate messages to numerous underage boys. A young man named Isaiah, who was only 16 at the time, came forward and said that James sent him nudes over Snapchat and tried pressuring him to reciprocate.
And after telling him, no, I'm not gonna send it to you, he kept on asking for pictures and videos of body hair and me flexing and stuff. He proceeded to ask to FaceTime me, which I then said no to, and then I asked why. And this is what he said. It's sad to say that I can't even look up my biggest influence the same again. I've heard multiple stories about him doing this to people, but you never believe it until it happens to you.
Initially, Isaiah was excited to talk to James given that he was his favorite influencer, but as the conversation went on, Isaiah was clearly uncomfortable given the 5-year age difference and lewd nature of their messages. James not only denied the allegation on Twitter, but also accused Isaiah of lying about his age, to which Isaiah replied with, "James, we both know I blocked you. You never asked me for my age. After I told you I was 16, you proceeded to ask me for nudes and said it didn't matter. You called me hot and said, I wish the timeline could speed up so you can be 18. Soon after, a 17-year-old boy revealed Instagram DMs between himself and James. Allegedly, the conversation was not sexual, but it still left this individual with a weird feeling afterwards. Over the next couple weeks, more and more teenage boys came out with similar allegations, making it very clear that this was a concerning pattern of behavior. On April Fool's Day, ironically enough, James uploaded an apology video called Holding Myself Accountable. I'm not going to break down all 14 minutes, but essentially, James confirmed that he did have inappropriate exchanges with two of the minors who came forward. However, allegedly, both boys lied about their age, and he was under the presumption that they were both 18. Allegedly. James agreed that he should have never reached out to the victims, at least the only two he mentioned. And moving forward, he won't be using Instagram and TikTok as dating apps. But in my opinion, any responsibility he took in this video was worthless because of this next statement.
And I couldn't understand why relationships were the one outlier. Why were they not working? Why was this area of me so different? And I finally came to a conclusion. It sucks and it is ridiculously embarrassing to admit this, but I think I have to, and that is that I'm desperate.
That's right, sinners. James Charles sexted several minors because he's desperate. Oh, he's so lonely in his $10 million house. He just wants a boyfriend. Emphasis on boy. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Cry me a fucking river, dude. Following this response, more than 15 people came forward about James's unwanted sexual advances towards them. Again, James claimed that all these boys were lying and that he'll be taking legal action from here on out. Keep in mind, we're talking about suing teenagers here because you try to sex them. If anyone's catching a case in this situation, it would be you, James. Allegedly, brands like Morphe distanced themselves from James due to the seriousness of these allegations, and YouTube even demonetized his channel for a period of time. Even before this happened, James has been accused of trying to turn straight men. If you remember, this was one of the main points of contention Tati brought up in her infamous video, Bye Sister.
You are using your fame, your power, your money to play with people's emotions. You're threatening to ruin them. You're threatening to embarrass them. And you're doing that to have them behave sexually in your favor, even if they're straight. And you know what? That's not okay. That behavior is not okay. Whether you're a woman, a man, gay, straight, bi, whatever sexual orientation you are, that is your personal call, and it is not someone else's to take. It's not someone else's to play with. It's not someone else's to mess with. And how dare you laugh about it and make meme after meme and retweet and this and that and I love straight boys and make it a joke.
Tati also shared that James made suggestive comments about a waiter at Tati's birthday dinner in front of her family, and apparently the waiter's sexuality didn't matter to James because he's a celebrity, which led to this iconic soundbite that I still quote to this day.
It was just like, no big deal. Like sucking and like, I'm just like, oh my God, time and place. And you did it at my birthday dinner.
And you did it at her birthday dinner. You really did. Another influencer named Gage Gomez also accused James of coming on to him way too strongly, despite the fact that Gage was very clear about being straight and liking women. And the most recent allegation of this behavior was about 6 months ago from the time of recording. Apparently, James was flirting with yet another heterosexual man by explaining the benefits of being his boyfriend. It's a really lucrative role. It's called My Boyfriend. Requirements: 6'2 plus, must love escape rooms, horror movies, and cuddling, big dick, as you do, armpit hair. Do the guys he likes even have armpit hair? Ooh, I could get in trouble for that. An occasional FaceTime call. The salary is $0, but it's a good job offer, I think. Perks include a cute boyfriend with a great personality and huge ass, free living in a $10 million house in LA, fun travel opportunities, good and more. You know, James, I didn't want to think of you giving today, so thank you for putting that awful image in my mind.
So if I be like, oh my God, David, you're annoying, over text, right? You don't know if I'm saying like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Or like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Or like, oh my God, David, you're being annoying. Because all three of those are completely different like emotions that you cannot see through text. You only get to actually experience those through a FaceTime call or through being in person. Even over the phone, you still miss out on things because you're missing somebody's facial expressions, right? So because you refuse to hang out with people or because you refuse to FaceTime, you're not allowing people to actually get to know you as like a human being. And that's a massive, massive problem whenever it comes to being in a relationship with somebody. You cannot fall in love with somebody simply just from text.
But I thought he was gonna stop using Instagram to find a boyfriend. Weird. I'll leave a link to the rest of the thread with all the receipts down below if you'd like to look into that further. All in all, James's alleged forceful and predatory behavior is nothing new, and he's proven time and time again that he's learned nothing from his past actions. Like I said at the beginning, James has always been one to engage in drama, but the accusations from 2021 ultimately led to his fall from grace. He still has a regular audience on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, but his engagement now is nothing compared to how it was just a few years ago. Grooming minors is obviously James's worst offense, but I would say this next clip is definitely a runner-up. This is how I imagine a stick figure would do a TikTok dance. Which now brings us to the present day. On July 13th of this year, Cosmopolitan released a fluff piece on James Charles and his cancellation. In my opinion, Gabrielle really downplayed the severity of these accusations, some of which were self-admitted by James. I would even go as far to say that she victim blamed quite a bit. But we're gonna go through the article and I'm gonna share my unfiltered thoughts, to say the least. I try to be as pragmatic as possible for this first half of the video as I was recounting what James Charles did, but I'm probably gonna get a lot bitchier over the next several minutes because this article pisses me off. With that being said, let's see why James Charles wants to be uncancelled. More than 2 years after allegations of sexual impropriety sent the superstar beauty YouTuber into influencer purgatory, he's hoping to relaunch himself and his brand with the help of a new makeup line. Yeah, it's no coincidence that this article is coming out around the same time that James Charles is releasing his new makeup line. In my opinion, he did it for at least one of two reasons, but they're both with the same motive. Number one, he's trying to get into people's good graces so they buy his dumb makeup. Or two, just like many influencers of James's caliber, he knows that all attention is good attention and he'll take what he can get. That's what happens when you don't have morals. In a wide-ranging interview with Cosmopolitan, Charles talks about f***ing up and trying to move on. I would say that sexting teenage boys under the age of 18 is a fuck up, but I feel like that's still an understatement. It is the year of our internet 2023, and as surely as the sun rises, an internet celebrity has an apology to make. So here I am, sitting in James Charles's Encino mansion like a pop culture priest, ready to take his confession. Already, I'm getting very condescending vibes from the author. She's acting like James got canceled because he, I don't know, photoshopped his makeup look or something small and inconsequential like that, not for literally, allegedly grooming minors. Let us begin. I don't want to sit here and effing mope and whine and cry because nobody wants to hear it, says Charles. Although I'm sure you'll do that anyway. Sinking into a plush couch in his casual open living room. I had to do a lot of thinking. Like, okay, babe, this is your fault. Yeah. No, you're not a pedophile. No, you're not a effing groomer. Beg to differ. No, you're not a predator. We'll agree to disagree, but you made a big mistake. At this point, you're likely familiar with the specific quid pro quo inherent in celebrity profiles like this. The ones that come together post-cancellation after a respectable amount of time has passed post-cancelable sin. It's no surprise that a star's willingness to answer intimate questions about a catastrophic stretch of their lives increases dramatically when they have a project to promote. In today's case, that's ostensibly Charles's new makeup line, Painted, but it's also Charles himself, a warier, acceptably contrite but still just a little extra Charles. This very interview is to be a trial balloon. Its reception the answer to the question both of us, and maybe you too, if what auto-populates in Google search can be believed, are here to ask, is James Charles still canceled? Okay, I don't believe that James came forward and did this article for any other reason other than attention and money. And I love how she's wondering if James Charles is still canceled as he's doing an interview for one of the biggest magazines in the world. Doesn't sound sound like cancel to me. After all, would a still ousted person be allowed to pose for red carpet cameras at the People's Choice Awards or chat amiably with paparazzi while out and about in Hollywood? In my opinion, I feel like she's mocking how cancel culture really doesn't apply to men, especially conventionally attractive white men in the media, and this does not sit right with me, because James Charles should rightfully be canceled and not have a platform because he endangered minors on the internet. Allegedly, but most likely because he came out and admitted to at least 2 of the boys that he sexted. I feel gross saying that. Would a still banished person have hundreds of thousands of fans enthusiastically engage with his YouTube beauty tutorials? Yeah, because his fans are like 12 and they don't understand the gravity of this situation. Would a truly exiled person be 24 years old and living in a reportedly $7 million farmhouse that looks like a cross between the homes featured in the later seasons of Vanderpump Rules and any season of all iterations of the Kardashians? You know, black and white modern exteriors, hyper-organized interiors. When I arrived, I noticed Oreos decanted into glass. I could not give less of a fuck about how James Charles arranges his Oreos. Stop trying to humanize and make this fucking creep relatable to us when we know what he did. There's a lot riding on the answer. Painted, a solo venture 4 years in the making, launches in just a few weeks. People have speculated that I have partners or investors, which I don't know how that rumor got started, Charles says. This line is fully self-funded. Every single dollar that has gone into the brand has been from my personal savings and checking accounts. I have no investors, no partners, no billion-dollar backers behind me. That neither of us know how it will go is due to the murky nature of cancel culture and its crisscrossing tripwires of implied and loosely enforced rules. And because of a hungry and fickle internet that doles out forgiveness, or maybe just forgetfulness, seemingly at whim. I can kind of see where she's coming from, but I think his makeup line, unfortunately, is still gonna do somewhat well just because he has an army of 12-year-olds that'll buy whatever he pushes, and also adults who don't really give a shit about the accusations, or they're not aware. It's a landscape. Hellscape, some would say, in which all comebacks are tentative and where the conversation around an offense often ends up obscuring the offense itself. I would actually agree with this, and I feel like Gabrielle is proving her own point, because this conversation trying to hype up James Charles and downplay what he's done is an attempt to negate the seriousness surrounding these accusations. When I polled friends and colleagues about Charles in the run-up to this day, the general consensus was that he'd done something bad, but no one was clear on exactly what. I can't wait to hear your account of the something bad that James did. Let's see. As a very online millennial, derogatory, I had long been ambiently aware of Charles while also knowing next to nothing about him. The influencer's platonic ideal. Bored at home during the pandemic, I watched the Dramageddon feud he had with another YouTuber whose name I can never remember, a hilariously non-scandal scandal that possibly had something to do with hair vitamins? She's trying to throw shade at Tati Westbrook, isn't she? But to boil down Dramageddon to just a feud about hair vitamins is quite frankly an understatement. Like, did you forget that Shane and Jeffrey manipulated Tati into following their plan of trying to take James Charles down? Anyway, I'm not gonna divulge too much into that. Anecdotally, it seems like everyone in my life under the age of 25 considers Charles an internet celebrity, and no one over 45 has ever heard of him unless they have kids. So then what about like that 20-year difference between 25 and 45? Because I know a lot of millennials who are very aware of James Charles and his past. Like, this to me just seems objectively wrong. Those in the former group know that he's been famous since his teen years, although his storylines, so to speak, are all self-produced. Charles first went viral in 2016 after he brought in a ring light and used glossy highlighter to accentuate his cheekbones for his high school yearbook photo. Wrong. That has been proven since then to be a complete lie. I think it's very poetic in the worst way that James's first milestone in his beauty career was a lie. That's just a testament to the kind of person James Charles is. Suddenly, he was everywhere. To our dismay, the first male spokesperson for CoverGirl, a guest on Ellen. He did a commercial with Katy Perry, filmed with the Kardashians, and hosted a YouTuber reality competition show aptly titled Instant Influencer. You know, the same show where they had a whole challenge where the contestants had to pretend to do a YouTube apology and fake cry on camera? Yeah, it was that show. The combination of his fresh-faced, youthful earnestness and bold, maximalist aesthetic made him one of the most financially successful beauty YouTubers of all time, with a rumored annual income of more than $10 million in 2020. That makes me sick to my stomach. At one point, he was so popular that a reported 30-second appearance he made at a British mall drew thousands of teenagers, helping create a traffic gridlock so extreme that some drivers apparently abandoned their cars overnight. In a corner of the internet known for constant sniping, backstabbing, and hopelessly convoluted rivalries, the same lack of guile and perma-logged on status that drew viewers to Charles also made him a magnet for drama. There he was, posting regular apologies for things like insensitive tweets about Africa and Ebola, you say insensitive, I say racist, or for asking Shawn Mendes to juggle me like that during an Instagram live stream in which Shawn literally juggled. James has always been unapologetically horny on Maine, to say the least, but instead of dealing with those feelings offline in whatever way he chooses, he has to borderline harass other celebrities and people online to fulfill his desires. Like I said, this is a pattern. James feels entitled to act whatever way to any guy he's interested. Charles developed a reputation for a kind of over-the-top thirstiness, a quality that could be interpreted as refreshingly candid or slightly cringe, depending on who you asked. Slightly cringe? That's awfully generous of you, Gabrielle. I would argue that it's criminally cringe, considering that some of the people he was thirsty towards was minors. At least one rival, it should be said, interpreted it differently. His Dramageddon opponent initially accused Charles of using his fame to manipulate straight men. True to influencer form, she retracted the claim and apologized a year later. And even if that was untrue, allegedly there are still plenty of receipts showing otherwise. Yet all the drama seemed to ultimately earn him one thing: more followers. At his peak, Charles had nearly 26 million YouTube subscribers on top of tens of millions more on TikTok and Instagram. That was all before though. Here we go. In February 2021, at age 21, Charles confronted a career crisis he couldn't quickly apologize for or capitalize on. He was publicly accused of sending lewd photographs and inappropriate sexual messages to a then 16-year-old fan. Charles says he was misled into believing the boy was 18 and that he blocked him as soon as he learned the truth. I've never been more disgusted in my life than when I found out that kid was 16 years old, Charles says now. I was mortified, absolutely mortified. The fan did not return Cosmopolitan's request for comment. I wonder why. Something tells me that he wouldn't want to come on such a huge publication like Cosmopolitan to be interviewed by seemingly a James Charles apologist. The allegation triggered more complaints against Charles. They were primarily disseminated in the form of TikToks filled with screenshots of flirtatious conversations Charles had allegedly conducted with a number of male fans. I think that same 16-year-old mentioned last paragraph also showed blurred screenshots or screen recordings of nudes and lewd photographs that James Charles sent. That seems pretty hard to fake. A few of the reported accusations, like the initial one, were serious and claimed to detail inappropriate online interactions between Charles and minors. Other claims, including an incident in which Charles allegedly called someone daddy, felt muddier. Almost all of them were eventually rounded up into viral Twitter threads by a controversial poster who keeps track of internet scandals, now under fire himself. In the end, substantiated or not, multiple media reports indicated that at least 15 boys and men had accused Charles of inappropriate behavior. Charles says now about the breadth of the allegations. The source of where the list came from was not doing any sort of research. No fact-checking. Some of the screenshots depicted consensual conversations between adults, he says. Others were completely fake and never even happened. Charles has never been legally charged with engaging inappropriately with a minor, let alone proving to have knowingly done so. Nevertheless, that April, Charles uploaded a 14-minute YouTube video titled "Holding Myself Accountable," where he admitted to inadvertently exchanging messages with two 16-year-old boys he said he was led to believe they were 18, and he apologized for his desperate behavior. This article has the same vibe of TMZ claiming that Colleen Ballinger is in trouble because of a fart joke. Like, it seems that she doesn't grasp or care to acknowledge the severity of these accusations and how James has negatively affected so many boys and men's lives. And now here he is getting a propaganda piece in the world's biggest magazine. Awesome. Cosmopolitan reached out to multiple people who said they were minors at the time of their exchanges with Charles. One asked if we would be willing to pay and did not reply again when told our publication does not compensate sources for interviews. I respect the hustle from that kid. But Gabrielle, I have a question for you. How much did James Charles pay you to write this stupid fucking fluff piece? Was the check really that big to just completely ditch your morals and your ethics, your integrity, your reputation? Because, spoiler alert, not many people are happy with this article. Hope the money was worth it. But when another former accuser wrote back via Instagram DM with the new revelation, he said, already privately apologized to Charles a few months ago for telling him I was 18 a few years ago, and the TikTok that I made blew the situation up. When asked to elaborate, the person did not reply. Charles' team says someone did message Charles this spring, admitting he lied about his age. But there still are numerous other accusations that James has to answer for. Plus, James confessed in his Holding Myself Accountable video that he had sexual exchanges with 2 minors. That is still too many. Even if this person lied, that still doesn't make that okay. If a celebrity with tens of millions of followers came sliding into your DMs, would you respond? I probably would. Yeah, I would too. And that's exactly the problem. James knows that his fans are on the younger side and that they basically worship him. They're not cognizant of parasocial relationships and how he's not actually their friend or their pal. And he's willing to exploit that because he's desperate. But James likes the attention. He likes when people fawn over him. He wants yes men in his life. And his fan base just happens to be the perfect age range for a future boyfriend. Oop. Allegedly, Charles says he recognizes the power imbalance at play in his interactions online. He should have verified everyone's ages, he says, and been more sensitive to how his fame could color the way others responded to him. Not only should you have verified their ages, but you should have also not messaged them in the first place. You're one of the biggest names on beauty YouTube. You live in Los Angeles, where a bunch of other influencers and micro celebrities also exist. Plus, California has a very huge queer population. You're telling me that you can't find a guy who's legal and an adult and not a minor? Well, listen to this. Oh, I absolutely did fuck up, he says, but he denies that he ever engaged in grooming. A practice defined by the anti-sexual violence organization RAINN as manipulative behaviors that an abuser uses to gain access to a potential victim, coerce them to agree to the abuse, and reduce the risk of being caught. Is that not what James Charles did? He's going through his Instagram DMs requests to find a message from a fan that thinks he's cute in hopes of becoming their boyfriend or to have some sort of sexual interaction. The guys he chooses, a lot of them, at least from what we know, are on the younger side. Some of them perhaps too young. Like, is that not the textbook definition of grooming? In fact, let's pull up the definition of grooming on RAINN's website. According to RAINN, grooming can take place online or in person. It's usually employed by a family member or someone else in the victim's circle of trust, such as a coach, teacher, youth group leader, or others who naturally have some interaction with the victim. Notice all these people have some level of authority in this person's life. A famous influencer this person is a fan of would be a person of authority in this situation. Like, Gabrielle, you can't be serious right now. Like, this is mind-blowing how fucking stupid you are. No morals, no integrity, no brain cells. Charles continues, I feel like that word is a very popular buzzword right now, especially in politics and stuff. But the actual meaning of it has been so misconstrued. Thanks to your friend Gabrielle over here. Referring to the first allegation against him, he adds, the conversation lasted 1 hour. I don't know this person. I've never met this person. Nothing happened between me and this actual person. So to use that word is so categorically incorrect. But according to RAINN, grooming can happen online and in person. This was online. You allegedly, although I definitely believe the victim, you allegedly send this kid nudes. In the absence of hard evidence, hordes of commenters and bystanders glommed onto the idea that Charles was creepy, irresponsible at best, possibly predatory at worst. Take away the possibly and then You got that right. His apology, one in a burgeoning and much mocked genre of YouTuber influencer mea culpas, was full-throated, but it did nothing to quell the furor. After years of benefiting from online controversies, Charles had officially become too toxic for the internet. You could say that again. His YouTube page was demonetized, he did not return as the host of Instant Influencer, and his other business ventures languished. He and Morphe, an influencer-focused beauty brand with which he partnered on an eyeshadow palette and brushes, cut ties. You're saying all this like this is a bad thing. Charles' team said this was done at their own request after they saw Morphe getting backlash for associating with Charles. Charles told me he pocketed a small amount from the deal that allowed him to buy his house and pay off his parents' mortgage. The small amount that he mentioned has the same vibe as a small loan of $1 million. One estimate put his total loss of income in the millions. Would you look at that? The consequences of your actions, dude. Maybe don't be a fucking creep. James Charles, don't be a creep challenge. Gone wrong, gone emotional, impossible. I can't even begin to explain to you how bad that week of my life was. Charles remembers as he looks out at his backyard, and I can't imagine how bad that week was for your victims. I was crying myself to sleep every single night. I was sitting there in bed staring at my phone. I wanted to K-word myself. I wasn't talking to anybody. People threw food into his yard and spray painted his property's fence, prompting him to hire security. Now, I don't wish thoughts of suicide on anyone, even someone like James Charles, and I certainly don't encourage anyone to invade someone's privacy like they did with him. I think I've always been somebody who's been able to cope, he continues. I've been able to turn my phone off, to go see my family, to have friends over, go to an escape room, watch a fun movie, play Mario Kart, play Minecraft, to find more boyfriends. With this situation, it was really scary because my coping mechanisms weren't coping. It was the first time where I was like, oh I actually don't know what to do here. I eventually got to a point where I was like, this is not healthy, this is not good, this is getting to a really effing dark place. I guess props to him that he realized he was in a dark place. The fallout became deeply personal when his younger brother, who works as a model in New York City, stopped talking to him because of the allegations. It's now been 2 years since they last spoke, Charles says. I would imagine James and his brother know each other very well. With that being said, what does his brother know behind the scenes that made him want to stop talking to James altogether? I'm very curious to hear James's brother's point of view on that. Treading a well-worn post-scandal path, Charles spent the next few months mostly offline, doing a lot of self-reflection and conferring with mental health professionals. And while a couple of months may seem like a laughably short time for a break, to Charles, having no stage felt like an endless punishment. I absolutely effing hated it, he says. I'm somebody who likes to be busy at all times. I love filming. Having nothing to do drove me insane. That is an insane privilege. That's a privilege I have to a much smaller extent. I definitely don't have the same amount of subscribers or money as James Charles, but if I don't post a video for a couple weeks, I'll be fine. And that is an insane privilege that I have, and I will always acknowledge it. I hope I never get to a point in my YouTube career where I can't recognize that I am in a very, very privileged position. And I'm so grateful to you at home for watching and for supporting me and allowing me to live my dream. So thank you for that. Anyway, with him saying that he hated having a couple months off to reflect and relax and talk to a therapist pisses me the off. So many people are working dead-end jobs, working 12 hours a day, working 60 hours a week for a fraction of the amount of money James is making every year. And yet he's complaining that he could take months off at a time at his discretion and still be fine. Do you know how many people would love to do that? To take a couple months off, to take a break from their job, still be financially secure and be able to get the mental health care they need? That is a privilege most people don't have and never will, unfortunately. This is just a very ungrateful and entitled attitude. Again, cry me a f***ing river. And also, before we continue, didn't James say that he was gonna come forward and talk about the work he's done behind the scenes? Where's that? You could post a shitty apology with a bird's nest on your head, yet you can't give your followers the respect and the courtesy of coming forward and talking about how much you've changed, or at least trying to change in the first place? Ugh! Okay, I'm gonna continue because I feel like I can go on a rant forever. In the summer of 2021, Charles prepared a comeback video, a 30-minute YouTube post titled An Open Conversation, which began with the acknowledgement that it would be ridiculous and irresponsible to try to just come back to social media and pretend like nothing happened. It quickly became YouTube's most disliked video of the week, according to Forbes. That's kind of funny. Although it's been watched more than 6 million times to date. His next post about a TikTok cookie trend was only the third most disliked video of the week. That's an improvement. So Charles kept posting, driven by what I'd armchair therapists diagnose as a compulsive need for online interaction. It's not just his brand. It's been his entire personality since grade school. There's that saying that people don't mature past the age they get famous, and I fully think that's the case for James Charles. Because he acts like every high schooler on Snapchat. Probably why he's dating high schoolers. As the only out gay kid in school in a small town outside Albany, New York, Charles found his community on social media, he says. First on Tumblr, and then on Twitter and Instagram. We liked each other's blogs and would talk back and forth and Skype call on school nights just to chit-chat and hang out. When he was 13, he traveled to New York to meet the girlies he'd met on the internet. Romantic relationships would become a whole other challenge, one that ultimately led to the incidents, he says, capitalized. Finding dating prospects in the rarefied influencer celebrity strata he eventually vaulted into was tough. Quickly, please name 5 famous male gay celebrities from the ages of 20 to 25. You, Chris Olsen, Kit Connor, Joshua Bassett, Lil Nas X, and I'm sure there's so many other queer and gay men that I'm forgetting. Like, if you can't name 5 famous queer men, you need to go outside. So the internet, once again, he says, became an avenue for exploration. He started using TikTok's For You and Instagram's Explore pages as dating apps, as many people his age do, but admittedly ignored the pitfalls. Yes, that's a normal thing for people to do, but the difference is most people don't have 20 million followers. And with great power comes great responsibility. His biggest mistakes, he now thinks, were making himself too available and recklessly hitting on anyone he thought might be showing him interest. His intention was never to prey on minors, he says. He tried to explain all this in Holding Myself Accountable, but it just didn't come across right, he reflects. I've been f***ed over by men so many times, at this point I just want a f***ing boyfriend. Somebody that's going to love me, that's going to care for me. So a lot of times I just go into talking to somebody with rose-colored glasses. This is just me armchair diagnosing like Miss Gabriella here. It seems like James has a lot of inner work to do before trying to get a boyfriend, because his desire for validation and attention is not gonna go away overnight when he has a man in his life. I still have to ask though, why didn't he just stick to actual adult dating apps? He tells me he previously had accounts on Raya, Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble, and while he did go on dates with people he met there, he ultimately felt too exposed. Like anyone he swiped right on was going to take screenshots of their conversations or brag to their friends about it. See, I can kind of sympathize on this because I understand why someone as famous as James would be discouraged from going on dating apps, because there's a high likelihood of being used for fame. So I get that, but it's like, do you not know other gay people in your area? Or do you not have friends who can set you up with other nice queer men? Or maybe you could take time to focus on yourself. Like, there's so many other solutions as opposed to just sending nudes to anyone who gives you the slightest bit of attention, particularly underage boys. I know, you know, and he knows that Charles is on a mission to rehabilitate his reputation. But, and even though we've already established he's very good at his job, I have to tell you that his regret doesn't come across in person as the opportunistic artifice so many celebrities begrudgingly wade through. It's more that he just seems young. Not that everyone in his position would have the luxury of being perceived as naive or guileless. This comeback would look a lot different if Charles were not a physically beautiful white man. I don't know why James Charles is always cut some slack just because he's young. Like, it's just been the same fucking excuse ever since he's 18 years old. Like, when is James finally gonna be old enough to accept responsibility for his actions? He's 24. He should know better. He's more cautious now, although not so much that he's given up on the DM sliding completely. Instead, he'll start requiring potential romantic interest to prove IDs before he'll engage. If you're dating people young enough where you have to ID them, that should be a red flag. More than anything, Charles seems focused on his goal, which is really to reclaim his spot in the cultural mainstream. I see a lot of people saying, oh my god, nothing even happened to him. He got away from this scot-free with no sort of repercussions, he said. That is so far from the truth. It certainly wasn't an overnight thing where now I'm slaying again. But he is trying. Hard. We can definitely tell. He hired a PR firm to help. They were trying to get me into every single event and premiere and red carpet and show, and every single one of them was a no, he says. Oh, you poor baby. You couldn't go to a movie premiere. Oh, that's so sad. Whether his efforts will be rewarded remains to be seen. For his part, Charles seems to believe in absolution, and not just for himself. I wonder why he didn't publicly post a screenshot of that purported apology note he got. Wasn't he mad? Didn't he want to give his haters at least one big fat I told you so? Possibly. So instead of posting it on his own platform, he's talking about it in one of the world's largest magazines. Okay. But if anyone knows what it feels like to have the full wrath of the internet bearing down on you, it's Charles. Everybody makes mistakes, everybody fucks up, he says. Don't get me wrong, I definitely don't think people should be able to do whatever they want and not be held responsible for it. It's important that people be held accountable, but I think it's important that we allow people to grow and to learn. How about we start with you holding yourself accountable, James? The idea that somebody fucks up and then their entire life and career and everything that they've ever worked for should be swept out from under their feet is just horrifying. Is it? Or is it just the natural consequences of your actions? In our own messy, imperfect way, maybe we're starting to calibrate our responses to the severity of an offender's offense. Maybe we've arrived at the point where we're doling out appropriate levels of social censure. Or maybe we're just tired of keeping score and ready to succumb to the path of least resistance, letting our feeds figure it out for us. I hated this. Gabrielle, this was a very verbose way of letting us know that you do not care about the implications of James Charles' actions on his victims. Alleged victims, don't sue me, although we know there's at least 2. If I haven't made it clear, I obviously stand with the alleged victims of James Charles. In my opinion, I believe you and I stand by you, and I don't think someone like James Charles deserves a platform. It's very disheartening and disgusting to see him abuse his position of power as a public figure. Sorry if I got really mad at certain points. I feel like I definitely did not hold back, but I'm very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the article. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think James Charles deserves forgiveness? Let me know down below. That is all I have for today's video. I feel like I have tired myself out and I just want to take a nap. If there's any other influencer pop culture stuff like this you'd like me to cover going forward, let me know down below. And in general, if you'd like to see me talk about anything in particular, I have a Google form linked in the description where you could submit video ideas. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a tiny thumbs up and subscribe down below. Thank you to Aura for sponsoring today's video. I love you and I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you next time with a brand new video. Bye! Yeah.